Nanashi!
What is up, YouTube? This is Nanashi back with another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile video. This time I'll be showing you the changes and updates to my Gusto deck. So I already updated this deck at the first of the new year, but wouldn't you know that a few months after I updated it myself, we suddenly get a brand new Gusto support wave that is incredibly good for the deck, and the ban list gives them a slight buff. I swear, this happens a little too often to be coincidental. Now, you'll recall that I ran some Simorgh and speedroid engines in the deck with the Gustos to bolster their board presence. I actually tried to remove either of them to make the new stuff fit in, but for some reason the new Gusto stuff didn't want to work without those engines. So instead, I trimmed both of those engines down a little to make room, and the differences are staggering. And you'll see what I mean when we take a closer look. Starting with the Gusto monsters, we have a pair of Gusto Eggle, and yes, you heard me right, a pair. We no longer need to run 3 of each of the floaters. In fact, technically 2 is not necessary, but I kinda prefer it that way. When destroyed by battle and sent to grave, it summons any 4-star non-tuner Gusto from the deck. We have a play set of Gusto Griffin, which now has even more dedicated avenues to play thanks to the new support. If it's sent from the hand to the graveyard, it can summon any Gusto monster from the deck. We have a pair of Gusto Guldo, which again, no longer necessary at 3. When he's destroyed on the field and sent to the graveyard, he summons any 2-star or lower Gusto from the deck. We have a playset of the all-new Gusto Vidir, a 3-star tuner that offers the deck both setup and necessary extension. It can responsibly summon itself from hand if a Gusto you control dies in battle or is just sent from the field to the graveyard, which does include my link material, by the way, because it's an if. And if it's normal or special summoned, it can send any Gusto monster from deck to graveyard, then it can also summon any Gusto monster from hand. We have a playset of Pilica, Descendant of Gusto. She was already the most used Gusto card in the deck before, but now she is a match made in heaven with Vidir. When summoned, she resummons any Wind Tuner from the grave in defense with its effects negated, but she locks you into only special summoning Wind monsters for the rest of the turn. We have 1 Cam Serenity of Gusto. I was going to bump her up to 2, but then the ban list happened and I bumped her back down to 1. But she's still a great card. She can soft once per turn, return any 2 Gusto monsters back to the main deck to draw a card. Then comes the non-Gusto monsters. We have a playset of Speedroid Car Turbo, probably the heaviest play tuner in the entire deck. As an activating effect, it can special summon itself from hand if you control a wind monster, but you're locked into only using wind monster effects for the rest of the turn. It can also banish itself and another Speedroid monster from the graveyard to give all wind monsters you control 800 attack for the turn. We have a pair of Speedroid Takaton board, because it slowly dawned on me that 3 was a bit too much. It inherently special summons itself from the hand if you control a wind monster, and it contributes itself to summon any Speedroid tuner monster from the deck, but it locks you into only summoning wind monsters for the rest of the turn if you do. Also, it can only be special summoned once per turn, regardless of how. And we have 1 Speedroid Terratop, because apparently it's still too good to be at anything higher right now. It inherently summons itself from the hand if you control no monsters, and it can add any Speedroid monster from deck to hand when normal or special summoned. Next, we have the Simorgh engine, consisting of 3 Simorgh Bird of Bringing and 2 Simorgh Bird of Calamity. These 2 share a common effect of resummoning themselves in defense position if the opponent has no spell traps on their field, but you're only allowed to summon winged beasts for the rest of the turn if you use their effects. In addition, Ringing can add any Simorgh card from deck to hand when normal summoned, and Calamity can send any Simorgh card from deck to grave when normal summoned. We have a playset of Win the Wind Channeler, a card that fixes your hand and pairs well with the Simorghs and Griffin. It discards itself and a wind monster to add any wind monster from deck to hand, but you can't use any monster effects for the rest of the turn except for wind monsters. Also, if she's in hand and a wind monster dies in battle, she can summon herself from the hand, but not really necessary. And we have 1 Mist Valley Apex Avian, a card people have told me is probably better off being replaced with a wind barrier statue, but once again, I am not an asshole. It can negate and destroy any activated card or effect by bouncing a Mist Valley card back to the hand, which will of course be itself. Next is the spell cards. We have one Called by the Grave. We have a pair of Elbors to the Sacred Lands of Simorgh to help speed out the birds. It boosts Wind Wing Beasts by 300. You can reveal a level 5 or higher Wind Wing Beast monster to reduce the tribute cost for all Wind Wing Beasts by 1 for the rest of the turn, and it gives you an additional normal summon of a Winged Beast monster if you already control a Wind Winged Beast. We have a pair of Emergency Teleport, which just came back to us at 2, and I am so happy. It special summons any 3-star or lower Psychic monster from hand or deck, but it gets banished at the end phase. 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Raigeki, and we have a playset of the brand new Tailwind of Gusto, an equipped spell that enables this deck to go ballistic. There's no better word for it. It can only be equipped to a Gusto monster, and it makes it indestructible to card effects. And once per turn, it lets you special summon one of 2 things based on what it's equipped to. If it's equipped to a level 4 or lower monster, it special summons a Gusto with a different type than the one that it's equipped to. If it's equipped to something level 5 or higher, it special summons any level 1 tuner monster. Best of all, if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it and discard any wind monster to add any Gusto spell trap from the deck to the hand, even a copy of itself. Now since we don't run any trap cards, let's just slide right into the side deck. I'm still playing my playset each of Cosmic Cyclone, Dark Ruler No More, Solemn Johnson, Solemn Strike, and Solemn Warning. And finally, we have the extra deck. We have 1 Gusto Guldos, the standby 5-star synchro for this deck. It shuffles 2 Gusto monsters in graveyard back into the main deck to target and destroy any opponent's face-up monster. We have 1 Vortex the Whirlwind, to try and dodge the Winged Beast lock just a little bit from the Simorghs. When destroyed by battle, it can summon any level 4 or lower Winged Beast from the deck, so it's also technically an extension piece to help you get into your Gusto plays. We have 1 Gusto Ram Pilica, which I barely even play, but when I do, it is a hardcore extender. You can only summon 1 of her a turn. When she is synchro summoned, she summons a Gusto from your hand and a Gusto from your deck, and then immediately synchro summons using just those 2 monsters as material, but you can only special summon wind monsters for the rest of the turn if you do this. And it prevents your opponent from targeting any other Gusto synchro monsters from targeting effects, so your OTK combo won't auto-lose to Imperm or Veiler ever again, while she's out. And speaking of the OTK combo, we have a pair of Gustos Freeze. On summon, it returns any Gusto card in graveyard to hand, it cannot be destroyed in battle, and any battle damage you would take with your Gustos is dealt to the opponent instead. We have a pair of Stardust Charge Warrior, but to be truthful, I only ever summon 1. If it is synchro summoned though, you get to draw a card, and you can attack all special summon monsters the opponent controls once each. We have 1 Clear Winged Synchro Dragon, a standby negator for this deck. It can negate and destroy any level 5 or higher monster's effect on the field, and any monster's effect that targets a level 5 or higher monster, each one once per turn. And if it did either of those, it gains attack equal to the card it negated and destroyed for the turn. We have 1 Wind Pegasus Adagnister, which breaks my heart because I wanted it to be Gusto Guldos, but Pegasus is just strictly better. It can destroy any number of opponent's spell traps up to the number of Adagnister monsters you control, and if he's on the field or in the graveyard when another card or cards you control is destroyed by the opponent, it banishes itself to target and shuffle any opponent's card back into the deck. We have 1 Crystal Winged Synchro Dragon. Little bit harder to summon, but way worth the effort. It can negate and destroy any activated monster effect and gains attack equal to destroyed card for the turn. And it gains the attack of any level 5 or higher monster it battles during damage calculation. We have 1 Totem Bird, because there's way too much convenient level 3 spam not to. It can double detach to negate any activated spell trap, but if it has no materials, it loses 300 attack and defense. We have 1 Harpy Conductor, and to be blunt, its effects are basically irrelevant. It can redirect destruction of any Harpy monster to a spell trap you control, and if your other Harpy monster is bounced back to your hand, it can bounce a special summon monster the opponent controls back to the hand. But realistically, it's purely in here as a link climb material to enable the 1-card Link 3 play Simorgh Bird of Calamity enables. We have a pair of hi-speedroid rubber band shooter, an extender that can set up so much playability, including for the OTK combo. It can banish any Wind Synchro monster from the extra deck to reveal 2 speedroids in deck with different names but the same combined level as the banished Synchro. Your opponent randomly picks one to go to your hand, and the other one goes to the graveyard. He can also give you 1 additional normal summon of a Wind monster, but you can only summon Synchros from the extra deck for the rest of the turn you do this. And finally, we have 1 Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty, the single best Winged Beast support this deck could have asked for. It protects itself and any Winged Beast monsters it points to from targeting effects. It can destroy another Simorgh card if it itself would die in battle, and at the end phase, it can special summon any Winged Beast monster from hand or deck whose level is equal to or less than the number of open spell trap zones both players have, and in most cases, that is a gateway for Apex Avian. And that is the deck. It took me a while to see where all the Avenue combos were for the new build. Vidir alone threw this deck into a whole new direction with so many different options, but now I can literally play the same opening move going first to thin and prepare the deck and board for the main Gusto combo on the next turn, or I can use those same cards to go into some alternative plays going second and land on my Gusto OTK combo fairly consistently. The deck can be that flexible. Now bear in mind the new support that Gusto got doesn't fix every issue they have, because that would require something akin to the Malefic Continuous spell level of rewrite on their float effects becoming super generic or something. But for the cards that we got, it absolutely helps and pushes the deck another step forward than it already was, and I am so happy Gusto's finally got the love they deserved. I thank you for watching the deck profile video. If you can think of any ways I can improve this all-win deck, feel free to let me know. In the meantime, this has been Anashi, signing out.
Everybody, put your hands up, softly light it to the